GPU collection is starting to take shape. Okay, let's jump right into this class review. So let's look at, now that we have a good representation of the 10, 20, 30, and so forth of the 80 class series of cards, let's take a look at a productivity deep dive. With plenty of people out there with games. Let me just take a focus here with productivity. So the goal is, let's look at what the generational uplift is from a 1080 to a 2080 and so forth. And we're going to make it a little easier because I usually have multiple systems that I run these things through. We're going to just narrow it to one bench, Intel bench, the i9 14900K, and looking at the 1080 Ti, 2080, 3080, 12 gig, 4080, 5080. I do have a 3080 Founders for this one. It's easier to pull together the 3080 12 gig data. I need to redo the productivity Davinci Resolve benchmarks for that card. It's currently pulling duty in the sim rig. Didn't really want to tear it out right away. So you see the statistics for this particular system. Custom loop, thermal grizzly contact frame, Optimus Signature V3 black, amazing block. It's what I've done all of my Optimus testing with the Keep It Cool 14th Gen series. If you go back and check out some of those, it's a great block. All right, so here are the 80 class GPUs. They are listed for you here in this table. And the top of the slide is directly from the Nvidia website. You can see the 1080 Ti doesn't have a lot of this ray tracing and a lot of these other feature set that the 2080 on actually has. I know this card is revered, so like, I'm not talking trash about the 1080 Ti, people, but you know, it is outdated equipment, and they're stopping support within the year, I guess, if you're a Windows user. Okay, so you've got your encoders, decoders listed, your memory bandwidth. Look down, tech power up data is on the lower part of the chart, and it tells you what GPU die it is, and all the way from the number of cores, TMUs, ROPs, making sure that you got them all, and all the way even from the suggested power supply to the launch price and the release date, and that'll come in here handy. The synthetic benchmarks, if you've been following along the channel, I really hope you have. I like that there's a set of synthetic benchmarks I like to run, but the 1080 Ti doesn't support certain things. So the 3D Mark Speedway, out. 1080 Ti won't run it. Cinebench R24 not supported with the 50 series, out. There's some weird things going on with VR Mark. Should probably figure that one out, but you'll see where I don't like some of the numbers, and I don't think it's necessarily the card issue as compared to the actual benchmark issue. The other synthetic benchmarks, the Game Tech bench, no ray tracing on the 1080 Ti, so I had chucked that one. So I've trimmed it down so that you get the same test for every card in the generational class. And for productivity, Octane Bench, can't do it. V-Ray, not going to run everything. So we can still do Blender, and we'll still use Puget Bench 1.2.0, basic and standard scores, focusing on the standard, which is the Studio user paid version, with using Davinci Resolve Studio 20.0. I know there's a 20.1. The tests were all run at the 0.0. And we'll look also at the rendering times using the H.264 codec and the MOV container on a 22-minute 4K file. All right, and so we're trying to keep it as concise, and when we get all of the scores, then we'll take a mean, and we'll actually have something to compare with. So let's get right into it. Here's the synthetic benchmark data. I know there's a lot of information on this screen. If I presented it another way, you would be able to flip back and forth and not see everything on the screen. So take a minute, pause it if you can. I'm talking extra long here because I want you guys to have a chance to look, zoom in. But look at the 1080 Ti, and I'm saying that those are the reference numbers because if you orient yourself to the slide, 1080 Ti, and then what's the uplift to go to a 2080? So the cyan room, like, something's up with this benchmark here because it doesn't really change any other group. But for some reason, 1080 Ti just ate it up, and then nothing. I don't know how it got that score. It's an amazing card, right? It's the GOAT of GPUs. You can see the generational uplift from the scores. You got 61.5% increase in Port Royal, even not doing as well. So you can see the overall was actually a drop in performance by the average score. So that explains why it wasn't really exciting to get the 2080 and everyone kept their 1080 Ti's, right? What happens when you move to the 30 series card? From the 20 to the 30 series, you saw a 33% improvement, but a cumulative improvement was still a 30% improvement. So you got a really good card when you went to the 30 series card. And I've been a fan of the 30 series. I've worked them hard. That's what I've started my systems with. They perform well, but there are better performing cards now, right? So you move to the 4080 and you get a 26% uplift from the 30 to the 40 series class. And then generationally, you've almost doubled the score. So I almost got 50% improvement. So you've almost doubled the performance scores from the 1080 Ti. So now we're cooking, right? So what do we expect when we go to the 50 series card? We went from a 26% generational uplift to a less than 10% generational uplift. And this doesn't come as a shock to anybody. This has been talked about ad nauseum. That is, 50 series were kind of lackluster in their horsepower, but the focus was on AI and all this other stuff. But we got a total of 53% from the synthetic benchmarks. What happens when we look at Puget Bench 1.2.0, which gives us a really good example of putting the card through its paces in terms of video rendering and working with content creation, whether you're doing photo manipulation, color correction, fusion, automation, every sort of a nice all-in-one package of what content creators may experience when using these GPUs. And you can see that you get a decent uplift in performance as you progress through the 1080 to 5080 series. And then from the uplift, you didn't totally double the score, though. I mean, you went from the 1080 Ti and you got a 46% total generational uplift from the 1080 Ti to the 5080. But you do get decent, steady score increases through the card range. And if you were interested in what cards were actually being tested, there's your detail on which card was used for each of these tests. But that's the benchmark scores. But what about rendering times? Does the rendering and the encoders help us here? You see that this is exporting the same 4K 21-minute file. The 1080 Ti does it in almost 6 minutes. And this over here, I don't want people to get too caught up in this, but the FPS fluctuates as you're running through your encoding of the files. And so it depends on if you're doing color correction or some kind of fusion thing. It really slows down and hits the card hard. But if you're processing just normal frames, then it speeds up. So it can fluctuate based on how intense your project has, what kind of elements your project has in it. What I saw was the approximate max FPSs. Now it didn't stay here. It constantly fluctuating, but I did see around 151. And so you can see generationally the type of FPS that the card would give it, sort of the muscle under the hood, if you will. And so comparing the render times, it was almost 30 seconds quicker to use a 2080 over the 1080 Ti. You picked up another over a minute to go to the 3080. Did it in 4 minutes and 19 seconds. 4080 Super did it in 3:45. And then the 5080 did it in almost 3 minutes and 5 seconds. So it dropped another 40 seconds here. And so your generational uplift, you got up to an 89% boost in performance from your 1080 Ti to the 50 series card. It's interesting to see that development, right? So let's put it all together here. from the synthetic scores to the productivity benchmarks. Let's average those numbers together, and what do we see? What we see here is about a 7,000 performance score, and then when you go to a 2080, you got a 6% increase in total performance from synthetics to productivity, somewhere around 6%. Now, it's the productivity score is kind of carrying it. The synthetic score wasn't too good. So what about the 3080? You saw a 27% uplift, and now we're up to a total of 31% generational performance uplift. And we've been spending $700 every time to buy these cards for these performance uplifts. Then in the 40 series, the original release of the 4080 wasn't $999. It was actually over $1,000. It was 1,100, something like that. Then they finally did a market adjustment and then released the 4080 Super, and then released it at $999 in January 24. And you see from the 30 series to the 40 series, you see an 18% increase in performance with a total uplift of almost 44%. And then finally, the 50 series card, and don't laugh because the $999 was the release price, but we all know what has happened in today's market and the ridiculous prices that these cars have seen, somewhere sometimes even $1,700 plus for a 5080. But we're now, as of August 2025, starting to come down out of the stratosphere and start seeing some options at $999. And for that price, it can give you less than 10% performance from the 40 series. So again, it's kind of lackluster. You do have some interesting things built into the 50 series card that you didn't have in the 40 series card and below. You've got some encoders built in to help with your productivity, but you did almost get 50% performance increase from the 1080 Ti. So this has been really interesting to take a peek at these numbers. I've enjoyed seeing the productivity uplift, and I am working on the 90 class uplift and pulling that data together. So with that, stay safe. God bless.